We see a world where there is a renewed emphasis on beauty, nature, creativity, art, and aesthetics.
I'd like to say a special welcome to our Spanish-speaking audience who are able to listen to the simultaneous interpretation that is taking place for this morning's service, thanks to the interpretation of Julie Burns. I appreciate that very much, Julie. This month, as you heard, new month, August, our focus is love, beauty, generosity of spirit, because that's what our movement's vision is all about, this global vision. It sees a world in which these and qualities like them are re-emphasized. And the recommended book for this month, oh, it is so beautiful. It is by Piero Ferrucci, who wrote The Power of Kindness, a book we used several years ago. I think we've used it twice because his writing is so excellent, and he's now writing about beauty and the soul and the extraordinary power of everyday beauty to heal your life. And in it, he tells this story of his personal heartbreak that has to do with an old town square in a small Tuscan town. Now, this town square was torn apart to make way for new offices and new businesses. And he says, the old town square was fine. There was no need to touch a single stone. In fact, the stones had been there for centuries, just sitting there. And of course, people have different opinions about this new development, whether or not it's a good thing or bad thing. Maybe the new town square is more efficient because it's making room for more businesses and more flow of people. And people disagree about whether or not it's actually beautiful, this new town square, because that's how we are. We've got different opinions. The point he's making is this, that when beauty is not a priority, we can end up making decisions based on other values. It's not good or bad. The results are just different. We're imagining a world in which we renew our emphasis on beauty and on love and on generosity, because to us, these qualities are qualities of the divine. And when we don't pay mindful attention to them, the qualities don't disappear, but the result changes. So we're asking the question, what is a world without beauty, without love, and without generosity of spirit? What does that look like? And who ultimately is responsible for bringing that into expression? I have confidence in the trickle-up method. I learned that here at the Center for Spiritual Living. Start with me. Start here with me and renew my emphasis on beauty, love, and generosity of spirit, and get so clear on it that I won't be comfortable when it's absent. I love to travel. I'm going to Bali on a spiritual pilgrimage in January with people from the center. And just last week, I was in Seattle. I spent the whole week with ministers as we explored how to rejuvenate our sense of ministry. So as a result of all this traveling, I get to spend a lot of time in airports. And I was noticing just the other day, I said, gosh, I can't always tell the difference between one airport or the other. I'm not sure if I've been there. The tiles could be different, and some of them have great displays from local artists, but everything else is exactly the same. Everything. See, franchise businesses have moved in, so that now, whether it's Seattle or San Jose or Los Angeles and now other international territories, you get the same food from the same vendors, packed in the same wrappers, same books, same electronics, same vending machines, all on display in exactly the same way. Now, I wouldn't use the word beautiful to describe what has taken place. I'm going to find another word. Ordinary. Bland. And it makes me wonder, what is the ruling passion in our airports and in our malls and in our cities, and more importantly, in us and in our leaders and in our politicians? And even more importantly, what have we become so used to that we stop noticing it? We settle for it, accept it. So back to the question, what does a world look like where there is no emphasis on beauty, generosity of spirit, and love? And who is responsible ultimately for bringing it into expression? In my mind, to renew emphasis on these qualities really takes mindful attention, mindfulness, one person at a time, wherever we can. We've got to teach it to our children. We have to bring it into our schools. We have to bring it into our homes. We have to bring it into our cities, into our airports. We have to bring it into our minds and nurture it in our relationships so that the things that make our souls sigh and the expressions that lift us up with awe and the stuff that warms our hearts are not exceptions, they're normal. They're not hard to find. They're hard to ignore. So more love, more beauty, more generosity of spirit. So this first week of August, we begin with love, and then next week we'll talk about beauty, and the weeks after about generosity and generosity of spirit. And love requires the same mindful attention that beauty and all the others require, so that it doesn't become displaced by convenience, profit, efficiency, blandness. So let's get some tips on love from children ages 5 to 10. They were asked, how do people who are in love usually act? Sarah, age 9, says, when they're in love, adults usually dress up. So if they are just wearing jeans, it might mean that they just broke up. What do most people do on a date? Mike, age 10, says, on the first date, they just tell each other lies. And usually that gets them interested enough to go for a second date. Well, how does love happen? Harlan, age 8, says, I think you're supposed to get shot with an arrow or something. But the rest of it isn't supposed to be so painful. What's falling in love like? Roger, 9, says, it's like an avalanche where you have to run for your life. Now these young ideas are fun, and at the same time they give us a little insight into what children may be picking up from us on how we emphasize love and what it is. I mean, what is it that we're doing that's role modeling these ideas for children? Emphasizing love in our world faces some significant challenge in today's society because so many people live solitary lives with fragile connections to community through the internet. In a world where short, quick messages are increasingly becoming the way to communicate. I was taught how to express love through listening. It was in a training program through an organization that provides peer-to-peer, one-on-one emotional support for people who have been diagnosed with life-threatening diseases. And so the volunteers, we were trained to really listen, to listen to more than the words that the clients were speaking. We were trained to listen for the meaning, if we could, behind the words. And we practiced to listen without forming opinions, if we could, or evaluating or getting ready to advise, because our goal was to see if we could understand more and more of the person's experience through listening. And one training exercise that made a terrific impact on me was we sat together, we were put in pairs, and we sat together but back to back. Our chairs were placed back to back. And one of us had to tell the other one a true and emotionally important story. And the other one's task was to listen, which proved to be very, very difficult because we were facing the opposite direction. And so we couldn't get the full range of the person through their visual cues or gestures. We felt disconnected because we couldn't see each other. We couldn't take each other in. And it was hard on the people telling the story, just as it was hard on the people receiving the story. The ones telling the story later reported that they did not have confidence that they had been heard or understood. And many of us in the exercise felt us resisting the urge to reach out and break the back-to-back formation because that's how strong our desire was to connect in this important exchange. So after the exercise, we sat down and we brainstormed what might it mean to really be present for each other. And we came up with some ideas. The first is to begin with ordinary caring and imagine that what you're about to receive is like a precious gift, or that you're listening to somebody who's very important to you, that you respect. And the second was to take into consideration the courage that a person facing a terminal illness might have to talk about the very things that they were talking about. And the third was to listen with kind-hearted interest. In other words, see if I can pay attention and notice when I start to categorize what's good and what's bad, or what's right or what's wrong, and then gently return to straightforward, ordinary listening. And the last is to be sensitive to the whole communication, to more than what is in the words, to see if I can listen to hear the feelings. Now, I did this training more than 25 years ago. And to this day, when I listen like this to anyone, the result is powerful for both of us because a meaningful connection is created, one that is beautiful and loving and generous. So this emotional support service for people facing terminal illnesses, they sent me out on my first assignment, and they partnered me with a vibrant, opinionated, boisterous man whose diagnosis had thrown his life into a spin. He had been told to get his life affairs in order quickly because there was no accurate way to assess how long he had to live. Now, I am actually introverted and quiet when meeting people for the first time. He was not. At our first meeting, he just pulled all the stops and he started downloading, sharing sensitive information, asking questions, making plans, discussing problems, all at once in a jumble of disconnected ideas and emotions. And I sat there quietly, taking it in. Not so much because I had been trained to do it, more because I was terrified. It was my first assignment, and I was terrified of what I was witnessing. So I sat there, still and quiet, and actually there was no opening to speak anyway. And if there had been, I wasn't sure that I would have known what to say, because of the magnitude, the largeness of what he was dealing with. And when I left, I felt terrible. I remember I went downstairs from his apartment and I got in my car and I sat there for half an hour, because I had just sat in that room like a lump. And I was sure I was going to be fired. and he contacted my supervisor to report me. Not for being bad, but because, as he said, for the first time, somebody had expressed confidence in his ability to work through his emotions without judging him at a time when he had no confidence in himself. That astonished me, because I thought after the meeting I had failed to say anything useful at all, and it turns out that being there in the room and not fleeing, keeping eye contact with him and listening to him in a focused way was the most meaningful thing I could possibly have contributed to him. And I worked with him for a long time. And later he shared with me that the listening that I gave to him helped him to feel like a human being. And I remember the time very clearly when one day he said to me, "And thank you, it's made me love you." And all I had done was to be there. Good, compassionate listening, it turns out, is patient listening. It takes time. Like love, love takes time. Now, people in distress may not be able to find exactly what it is they want to express in an orderly way right away. Their emotions might be moving very fast, and their thoughts might be moving even faster. So patience can help us wait for them to sort it out before we start making suggestions, pointing out what they missed, cutting them off. Good listening, it turns out, is attentive listening. Like love, love requires attentiveness. So the one listening, like the one loving, the one listening and the one loving abandons their smartphone and does not glance down now and then to read the next notification. A good listener, it turns out, gives up the world for a moment to be with the person listened to, focusing entirely on that person. Like love. Love requires a moment, a whole moment, in which the world disappears. I'm talking about love of a friend, love of a child, love of a parent, love of a pet, love of anyone. It all takes time, takes attentiveness, and it takes a generosity of spirit. So I have an assignment for you for this week. It's a mature assignment. It's for adults only. It's an adults only assignment, okay? Here it is. Talk to strangers. Be curious about people you do not yet know. And when you do this, it has to be more than small talk, right? Although that's a good place to start. But nothing fails like launching 20 questions on someone you've never met before without any warm-up to the conversation. So you've got to be classy about this. Don't be obnoxious. Don't do it with intense stalker energy. But rather approach it led by your desire to learn more, to understand more. So in that way, it means don't worry about correcting any wrong information the person you're listening to might have about politics, religion, or life. Instead, put your opinion on hold for a bit and listen generously. Sometimes when I get nervous and shy, like in an assignment like this, my mouth starts to move all by itself, and then just words pour out, and I start to talk aimlessly, and it effectively is like me talking at somebody, bombarding them with information that has the effect of distancing them from me. So this is a very important exercise for me to see if I can listen. So here's how I envision the assignment. Pick somebody every day that you don't know. Or maybe it's somebody in your work environment that you just don't know well enough. Or maybe it's somebody in your family. And talk to them. Don't talk at them. Bring your gentle, kindly curiosity forward and ask them questions. And it requires some bravery and willingness to accept a lukewarm response. And if you get any like that, just move on to the next one. Because somebody will respond, and when they do, you can practice listening to them open-heartedly, trying as best as you can to be present for what is being communicated beyond the words. And for this exercise to be truly effective, you've got to make yourself available to the experiment. And what that means is, this is not the sort of thing you try when you're in a hurry or when you have limited time. You can't do this quickly. It's like you can't make love in a hurry. Besides, you may already know what it's like to talk to someone who doesn't give you their complete attention. So don't do that. Don't be like that. Instead, make an effort to be present. And what can help is don't interrupt the speaker. Let them finish. And while they're speaking, see if you can notice their feelings. So you give your full self to them. And the reason for this assignment is this. To practice listening in this way is a method of emphasizing love, so that we don't become so used to isolation and disconnection that we think it's normal and we accept it. No, we have to trickle up. We have to trickle up with friendliness, interest, and warmth. We began this morning with the question, what would a world without love, beauty, and generosity look like? Well, in some regards, we already know. That's why we take this to be very, very important. Not only to imagine a world in which these qualities are emphasized, but also to take the steps in life that we embody it. For me personally, I cannot stress enough how important it has become for me to make the effort to interact one-on-one, eye-to-eye, in real time, peer-to-peer, with people in my life. I literally have to schedule it so that I can build community face-to-face. It's a beautiful thing to give others our full attention It generates understanding, it generates community, it grows compassion, it develops empathy, and all of this leads to love. And love, the scriptures tell us, is exactly what God is. So I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale, letting your eyes close, as we take a moment to turn our attention inward in prayer, to contemplate the divine in that form of love, infinite love, eternal love, love that has no ending, that kind of love. Love that is indiscriminate. In other words, it gives of itself to itself without checking first if the recipient is worthy. Love in the style of a sun that shines without ever setting. Divine love. And we contemplate this kind of love so that we may duplicate it in our own understanding, to open our hearts and our thoughts a little more to love in a way that is free-flowing, undefended, open-hearted, so that we may, through this prayer, reconnect with our natural inclination to love. So we let love guide us, to be available to the world, to listen, to experience, and to connect. And releasing any effort in this understanding, we let the love that is always present guide us in how to do it. Now, having spoken these words of prayer, I'm filled with a sense of appreciation. The goodness of life is revealing itself to me. And I am expecting the spiritual laws that govern the universe to do what they always do, and that is to respond to this word of prayer. Whereas we have so clearly felt and thought and imagined and declared, even now there is a conspiracy in life to bring about the opportunities for us to express this love in the world. And together we say, and so it is.